Welcome to Pages from the Past, wherever you are, whatever the hour. Tonight we're slipping quietly into the ancient world, not the loud one, the slow one, the world where shadows told time, and buildings remembered sunlight. This is the story of how Mayan architects without clocks, without compasses, measured whole cities using nothing but light, stone, and patience. If you're here to fall asleep, you're in the right place. My only warning, you probably won't make it through this day. But that's perfectly fine. If you find yourself drifting off, just know, the shadows will keep track of time for you. And if you're awake for a while, feel free to like this video, and gently subscribe. It helps more than 1,000-year-old calendar stone. You can also comment below where you're listening from, and what time it is there. We read every one. Now, settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's ease into tonight's journey, through temples, time, and soft, forgotten sunlight. You are standing in the shadow of a stone pyramid, though the sun hasn't even risen yet. The jungle is damp with dew, chirping with the slow wakening of howler monkeys, whose roars sound like something between an earthquake and a throat-clearing god. The air is warm already, sticky, almost theatrical, like it's trying to impress you. You run your hand along the limestone wall. It's smoother than you expect. The surface is cool, though it won't stay that way for long. Above you, the sky begins to pinken. Somewhere out of view, a conch shell is blown hollow and ancient. No, it's not a dream. You're in a Mayan city, around 750 AD, and today, well, you probably won't make it through this day. Not because of danger, but because this world is sleepier than a museum after lunch. Before we drift further, if you enjoy resting your eyes while learning oddly specific things about long-lost civilizations, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps more than a sacred corn offering. And, as is tradition, comment below where in the world you're listening from and what time it is where you are. We like to imagine your names lighting up like little stars across the globe. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey, one slow shadow at a time. You walk through the wide ceremonial plaza, where the stones still hold the memory of barefoot footsteps and whispered gossip. The pyramid ahead, Temple of the Seven Dolls, it's later called, has a narrow rectangular chamber perched awkwardly at the top. You climb, slowly, as your sandals press against the same angles a priest once did. The wind is light, tugging at your tunic like a bored cat, and then the sun rises. It's not just sunrise, it's math. The light slices through the temple door and hits the far wall at a perfect angle. Every spring and autumn equinox, it does this, never a minute late. You realize this entire building is aligned, not for aesthetic, but for timekeeping. It's a calendar made of rock, a watch you can walk inside. Historians agree the Maya were among the most precise sky watchers in human history. But whether they were tracking time for harvests, ceremonies, or just to outdo the neighbors, well, scholars still debate that over decaf cacao. As the sunlight slowly climbs down the temple's interior wall, you sit, cross-legged, in the cool stone chamber. Somewhere behind you, a worker coughs. Another sneezes, one of the lesser-known hazards of living among limestone dust and incense ash. And you close your eyes briefly, letting the shadow glide across your cheek. It's so slow, like watching honey drip sideways. The architects measured time by shadows like these, watching their movements across pillars, lintels, and courtyards. They didn't just build walls, they choreographed darkness. You lie back now, head resting on your folded arms, staring at the hole in the ceiling lined, of course, to a particular star that only appears in July. Which star? That's unclear. The carvings aren't talking, but scholars have been guessing for decades. And somewhere below you, in a tucked-away corner of the city, a stonemason is carving a jaguar's paw into the edge of a column, not because he has to, but because he wants to leave a joke for someone 1,000 years later to puzzle over. Spoiler, it works. Later in the day, though, you wouldn't know it by the soft, drowsy sunlight. You walk slowly down a narrow corridor between two low temples. The walls rise beside you like old shoulders. The space is so tight, you can almost touch both sides at once. It's not a hallway, it's a measuring stick. The corridor, built to face east, catches the shadow of a central pole just right, only twice a year. On those days, the shadow disappears entirely, not even a sliver. And when that happens, the community knows it's time to start the corn planting ceremony, or possibly the rain dance, or possibly both. The inscriptions are vague, as if the ancient scribes knew they were writing for people who would fall asleep halfway through. You pause mid-step, look down. The shadow of your own body has shortened to nearly nothing. You might as well be a ghost. In fact, you kind of are. Shadow measurement, or mnemonics, if you want to sound fancy at dinner parties, was used across many ancient cultures. But the Maya added flair. They used Chelten's underground chambers to trap daylight at precise angles. Some believe these were water reservoirs. Others say, nope, secret observatories. To this day, no one agrees, and no one has found the instruction manual. Up ahead, a young scribe is sitting in a shaded corner, rubbing red pigment onto a bark paper codex. He doesn't notice you, of course, but you notice him. His brushstrokes are steady, his eyes half-lidded in concentration. He pauses only to sip at a clay cup of a mild, honey-based drink that tastes like fermented flowers and regret. It's a ceremonial brew, slightly intoxicating, especially if you've skipped breakfast. And here is the obscure tidbit you didn't ask for. Mayan scribes, sometimes painted with brushes made from squirrel tail hairs. Soft, precise, and probably a bit ticklish if you weren't paying attention. The scribe shuffles, redips his brush, and continues marking out days and stars and gods and debts, so many debts. On one page, he sketches a king with an impossibly tall headdress. On another, a serpent curling through clouds. All of it timed, positioned, and proportioned according to astronomical measurements. You hear soft drums in the distance, more like heartbeats than music. A young acolyte passes by, carrying a ceramic bowl filled with burning copal resin. The smoke trails behind her like a lazy ribbon. It curls between columns. It makes your nose itch. You duck into a small courtyard framed by 4 pillars. On each, the shadow is carved, yes, carved at the exact angle the sun will cast on the solstice. So even at night, you can see where the light would have been. Leave it to the Maya to memorialize sunshine in stone. You run your hand along one of these carved shadows. The groove is deep and worn. You wonder how many others have done this, how many hands have followed this line, hoping to understand something wordless, something ancient. Or maybe they just liked how it felt. And just as your mind begins to wander, wondering about how they tracked Venus, how they mapped eclipses, how they somehow predicted solar alignments without an app, someone rings a shell bell. It's dinner, or more accurately, tamale o'clock. Tonight's meal is stuffed with beans, pumpkin seeds, and the occasional surprise chili. You eat slowly, watching the sky shift from amber to indigo. Fireflies blink between the trees like celestial Morse code. The stars appear one by one, and you suddenly understand why the Maya thought the heavens were another kind of city, just upside down. You lean back, belly full, spine relaxed, shadow long again, and above you, the moon is watching, still debating your next nap. You wake not abruptly, not dramatically, just softer, like a reed swaying in water. The night passed somewhere between moonbeams and mild dreams, and now the jungle exhales a cool morning breath. A toucan squawks in the distance. It's the avian equivalent of a car alarm, but at least it's colorful. You sit up slowly from your mat beneath the palapa roof, brushing away a curl of dried leaf from your tunic. Around you, others stir, stretch, yawn. One man even sneezes himself back to sleep. It's that kind of morning. Breakfast is squash, porridge with honey, and roasted cacao, nibs earthy, warm, and mildly energizing. Unless you were expecting coffee. No coffee. But on the plus side, no spreadsheets either. A woman next to you points toward the temple horizon, where the rising sun paints long, finger-like shadows across the plaza floor. You follow her gaze, and there it is, another silent measuring ritual. The plaza itself is a sundial, in the grandest, sleepiest sense. One stone casts its shadow directly across the foot of another. When they touch, it's time to open the market. And that market, well, it's not what you'd expect. You wander through stalls of woven cotton tunics, obsidian blades, clay flutes that make questionable bird sounds, and bundles of dried herbs, labeled only with glyphs that may or may not mean helps you sleep through snake dreams. One particularly cranky merchant is selling salt imported by canoe from the coast. He insists his salt is special. Sacred, he says, keeps the shadows obedient. You're not sure if he's joking. He might not be. Historical fact for the day. The Maya had an extensive long-distance trade network. Salt, jade, cacao, and feathers from the quetzal bird moved through rivers and footpaths like ancient Amazon Prime, just slower and with more mosquitoes. As you duck into a shaded alcove to escape the heat, you spot something familiar. Remember the Temple of the Seven Dolls from earlier. You see it again, but now from behind, framed through a carved arch that perfectly centers it. It's as if this spot was designed to reintroduce you to it, like the pyramid is waving politely from across time. You step forward and notice the ground is slightly sloped. Water once ran here, channeled deliberately to follow the contours of sacred geometry. They even used shadows to predict the flood paths during rainy season. Think of it as meteorology without Doppler radar. Scholars still debate how the Maya managed such hydrological precision without visible reservoirs or notes. One theory suggests they mapped water flow using painted gourds floating through trenches at different times of day. Another theory, they were just extremely patient and very, very observant. As you walk further along the raised path, your foot bumps something. It's a small stone figurine, a frog, no bigger than your thumb, with a rather judgmental expression. No one claims it. You pocket it quietly. It feels oddly warm, or maybe you're just sun-touched. Either way, it hops with you through the next hour, figuratively of course. That would be weird. By late morning, the sun is overhead, and so are the vultures, not ominous, just bored. You lie in the grass beneath a ceiba tree, eyes half closed, listening to the world hum. The frogs croak rhythmically, like slow drummers who've given up on tempo. And again, your mind slips toward rest. Just before you fall back asleep, you swear you see your own shadow stretch out, and pause, as if waiting for you to catch up. Now it's mid-afternoon, the kind of afternoon where even the stones seem to sweat. You're walking the edge of the observatory compound, where low walls snake around ancient star tables. They aren't marked like modern charts, but they're there. Carved, shallow, to catch the sun just enough to highlight certain glyphs, depending on the time of year. You lean over one, running your fingers along a symbol that looks like a turtle with wings. No one really knows what it means. Some say it's Venus, some say it's a calendar, some say it's just a turtle who dared to dream big. Honestly, same. Historical fact for today. The Maya tracked Venus with an accuracy that rivaled 20th century astronomers. They noted its appearances, disappearances, and brightness cycles, linking them to war and harvests. To them, Venus wasn't a planet. It was a warrior god with a punctual personality. You wander further into the observatory chamber itself, circular, with slits cut into the walls. Light enters like whispers, sliding across the floor in slow motion. One slit frames the sunset of the summer solstice. Another catches the rise of Venus on a particular spring morning. It's like a giant stone camera. If cameras told time and asked for human sacrifices now and then, you sit on the cool floor, letting the shadows inch toward your toes. Here's a fun cultural tidbit. Some Mayan priests kept shadow journals recording how long it took for certain pillars to be fully consumed by shade, not because it changed their lives drastically, but because it was beautiful, or boring, or both. Hard to tell. You pull out the frog figurine from your pocket. Its little stone eyes stare blankly ahead. You hold it toward the light and watch its shadow appear on the far wall. For a moment, it looks enormous, regal, like a toad god judging the entire cosmos. Then it topples from your hand and lands with a tiny clink. Shadow over. You chuckle to yourself. The sound echoes oddly in the chamber. Even laughter is geometric here. Outside, someone calls for the evening rituals. Candles are lit. Incense starts to burn again. The smell is familiar, now earthy and sticky sweet, like memory made of tree sap. You walk through the corridor of pillars, again remember that long hallway from earlier. It's back. But now the light comes from the other side. The same shadows, reversed. Same silence, deeper. You pass the carved grooves and recognize the places where your fingers once traced them. It's like revisiting a song played backward. Still lovely, just stranger. Above you, the sky turns purple. One star appears, then two, then six. Someone behind you hums a melody with no words. It might be about the moon, or frogs, or architecture. You're not fluent in humming. A gentle breeze carries a final murmur of sunlight across the temple's edge, and you walk slowly back toward your sleeping mat. Frog in pocket, dust on your sandals, shadow behind you, waiting to measure something again tomorrow. The jungle is quieter this morning, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder if someone forgot to press play on the birds. You sit up, blinking into a soft pear-colored mist. Even the insects seem to be whispering instead of buzzing. You stretch arms above your head, spine popping one vertebra at a time like the click of ancient gears. Your tunic sticks slightly to your skin, the dampness of night not yet lifted. Somewhere, a low flute plays a single repeating note. It sounds like someone trying to summon a god, or maybe just pass the time. You follow that sound, past the market, now packed up with folded cloth and half-sold baskets, past the frog-shaped altar someone's placed flowers around, past the small pyramid where someone is sweeping shadows off the steps with a palm-frond broom. And there it is, a group of young apprentices sitting in a circle around a very old man who is balancing a small obsidian disc on a stick. He's showing them how to find true noon. The disc casts a tiny shadow. The man adjusts the stick a fraction, again and again and again, At exactly the right moment when the shadow disappears entirely, he murmurs, "Now." All the children gasp. You do, too, though more out of politeness than awe. It's still impressive. He's just proven what clocks wouldn't confirm for over 1,000 years. Historical fact. The Maya understood the zenith passage of the sun, the moment when it passes directly overhead. In places near the equator, this caused objects to cast no shadow at all. They marked these days with ceremonies, dances, and sometimes dramatic storytelling, like a solar birthday party, but with more feathers. And here's your obscure cultural tidbit. On days of zero shadow, some communities believed the sun was watching directly, so it was a good time to confess things, or keep very still. You crouch beside one of the apprentices and whisper, "How often does this happen?" He shrugs, "Twice a year." Then he pokes you with a feather and asks if you're a cloud spirit. You choose not to answer. A slow breeze lifts the scent of lime and wet stone. Someone offers you a tamale wrapped in banana leaf. You eat it, barely tasting anything beyond the soft heat and mushy texture. Your stomach is grateful. Your mind is still thinking about shadows that disappear. Later, you follow the children as they scamper off toward the ball court. Ah, yes, the Poktapak arena. Stone walls rise on either side. A hoop is set high, impossibly high, on the slope. The game, you're told, is sacred. Players try to knock a rubber ball through the hoop, using only their hips. No hands, no feet, no fun, probably. You watch as they warm up. Two boys nudge the ball gently back and forth, their hips jerking in awkward rhythm. They look like they're dancing to a song no one else can hear. Here's where historians still argue. Was this a game, or a ritual, or both? Some courts show signs of celebration. Others, signs of sacrifice. We're not sure. The scorecards were never saved. But the stone walls, they remember everything. You lean against one, eyes half-lidded, as shadows from the players flicker and stretch across the court floor. The game begins. There is thudding, cheering, a yelp, a dramatic collapse. Someone shouts, "That counts." You yawn, and drift off again for just a moment, dreaming of disappearing shadows and toad gods playing sports. When you blink awake again, the court is empty. The stone hoop casts a sharp shadow now, its circle looking like an eclipse on the ground. You trace it with your toe, then stand and wander. The temple complex feels different at this hour. Not haunted, not eerie, just ... hushed, like it's waiting for something, or someone. You make your way down a narrow causeway, lined with steely tall stone markers carved with figures, glyphs, and stories. One shows a ruler with his arms raised, robes flowing like melting wax. Another features a jaguar standing on a turtle, probably symbolic, possibly just a weird joke. Historical fact of the hour. Stelae were often used to record significant dates, celestial alignments, and dynastic events. But they weren't always factual. Some inscriptions were straight-up propaganda. "I conquered 5 cities before lunch" sort of thing. Still, the dates are usually spot on. You stop at one in particular that shows a priest staring at the sky. There's a grid behind him, a calendar, a star map, a very early game of tick. Scholars still puzzle over it. Some believe it shows the movement of the moon over several cycles. Others say it's symbolic. Others say, "We don't know, let's go eat." A cicada screams overhead. Not scream like it just realized it's a bug and wants out. You laugh to yourself, the sound bouncing off the stones in odd angles. Just ahead, a large open courtyard appears, filled with circular stones, set flat into the ground. They look like oversized pancakes, You step carefully between them. A passing artisan, carrying a basket of pigment, sees your confusion. "Shadow stones," he says. "They show when the rain is coming." Then he walks away, whistling. You crouch beside one. There's a notch cut into it, shallow but precise. It points toward a carved head in the wall. The artisan wasn't joking. During the rainy season, shadows from a central pillar align with the notch and the wall carving. When they match, the community prepares the rooftops for runoff. It's practical and beautiful and a little bit magical. Your obscure tidbit here: some Mayan builders used crushed crystals in the plaster to make their buildings shimmer subtly in sunlight. A city that sparkled, just enough to remind you the divine was always watching, or maybe just to dazzle the tourists. You lie on one of the flatter stones, arms spread. The sun warms your chest. Your eyelids dip, and then something lands on your shoulder. A small lizard. Its tail twitches once. It stares at you like you've interrupted its nap. Fair. You both sit there for a while. Two warm-blooded creatures, basking under the same star, casting long shadows. Eventually, the lizard flicks its tongue, blinks, and vanishes. You remain, eyes closed, following the shadow across your own arm like a timekeeper without a watch. It's late afternoon now, and the world is made of amber and dust. You stir from your sun nap, the stone beneath you warm as a bakery tile. Everything smells faintly of toasted maize and old limestone, like a tortilla that's seen things. You stand slowly, stretching until your ribs creak, and make your way toward the eastern edge of the city. Here, the jungle presses in a little closer, like it's trying to reclaim something it once loved. Vines trail across fallen stones. Ferns curl against carved corners. Parrots mutter scandalously overhead, and tucked beneath a moss-covered archway is a tiny room. No grand inscriptions, no pyramid hat, just a low ceiling and a single slit carved into the wall. The slit points not toward the sun, but toward the horizon westward. You step inside. It's cooler here and darker. The air feels older, somehow settled, and then you notice it. A shaft of golden light piercing the slit, landing precisely on a small stone in the corner. Just one, surrounded by others that are utterly dark. And just like that, you realize you've arrived at a shadow trap. Historical fact: the Maya engineered shadow traps to mark very specific solar alignments. Some would only activate once every 260 days, the length of their sacred calendar cycle. It was like watching a movie that only plays once a year, and only for 2 minutes. No reruns. You sit quietly, watching the light move ever so slightly. The beam slips off the stone. Just like that, the moment ends. Obscure tidbit time. In some temples, certain shadow traps were hidden beneath removable floors. You had to know they were there. Archaeologists only found them centuries later by accident, or fate, or a clumsy intern tripping over loose limestone. You step back outside, blinking. The sun has lowered even further, painting the tops of the buildings in molten gold. Somewhere in the plaza, a flute and a drum begin to play again, this time slower, more like a lullaby for stones. You follow the sound, returning to that long corridor you passed through before. Yes, again. The shadows are different now, deeper. One stretches all the way across the walkway, like a line daring you to cross. You do. On the far end, an elderly woman sits weaving under the soft halo of a flaming torch. She hums as she works, and her hands move like they've been doing this since light learned how to fall. Her cloth is patterned not with flowers or birds, but with triangles, sharp little shapes that mimic the angles of sunlight hitting steps. You ask, softly, what the design means. She doesn't look up, just says, "It tells the time." Of course it does. Evening slides in like a secret. One minute you're watching shadows lengthen, the next, they're gone, swallowed up in twilight's slow exhale. You sit by a low fire now, just outside the temple courtyard. Several others are gathered, touching roasted corn, drinking and telling stories that all seem to begin with, "Once, when the sun disappeared." It's not a formal ceremony, it's just how people pass the time, like campfire tales, but with more astronomy. One man, wiry and missing 2 front teeth, tells of a night when Venus rose so bright that jaguars didn't dare hunt. Another claims he once saw a shadow split in two right down the middle of a temple wall, an omen, he insists, of twins being born, or maybe of rain. He's not sure. Here's your historical gem. The Maya used the movements of Venus to plan everything from agriculture to war campaigns. Their Venus tables were so precise, they could predict conjunctions years in advance without telescopes, spreadsheets, or even a good pair of glasses. You stare into the fire, watching the flames lick around the logs like sleepy serpents. Someone tosses in a dried herb bundle, and the smoke shifts herbal, spicy, faintly citrusy. You breathe in deeply, possibly too deeply. Your nose burns slightly, and someone hands you a clay cup with a grin. "Too much truth smoke," they say. You smile, sipping the drink. It's sweet and thick, like melted bark with a hint of honey. Comfort in liquid form. You wonder if this is what time tastes like. Now, the obscure tidbit. Some Maya believed that shadows had memory, that certain buildings held imprints of old rituals not in sound or smell, but in the way light landed on the stones. So when someone walked into the plaza at dusk, they might be walking into yesterday's story. No pressure. You lie back, arms behind your head, staring up at a sky so full of stars it feels like you could dip your hand into it. The Milky Way spills across the darkness like a silver road. To the Maya, it was a great celestial river, the path of souls and gods, and sometimes canoe traffic. Beside you, someone starts snoring gently. You're tempted to join them, but a final whisper of movement catches your eye. A lone bat flutters overhead, dipping once through the firelight before vanishing into the dark, and you feel it again, that sense that everything here is watching time, not counting it, not controlling it, just watching, like a shadow waiting for the next turn. You wake to the sound of water dripping slow and deliberate somewhere inside a cave. The air is cooler here, thick with minerals and secrets. You're not sure how you got here. Maybe you followed a guide, maybe you wandered half asleep, or maybe you were led by a dream shaped like a frog. You're in a cenote, natural sinkhole sacred to the Maya. Overhead, sunlight filters through a hole in the ceiling like honey through lace. It spills across the surface of the water, and the entire chamber glows a soft teal gold, quiet, still, holy. You sit on a stone ledge and stare into the water's surface, which reflects both your face and the sky above you. It's disorienting. You're both inside the earth and staring into the heavens. A young priest approaches silently. He places a small obsidian disc at the water's edge, carefully angled. He watches you do too. Eventually, the beam of light shifts, hitting the disc just right. A tiny reflected dot appears on the wall behind you. He smiles. The solstice is close. He whispers, "The shadow is telling us." Historical fact. The Maya used cenotes not only as water sources, but also as astronomical tools. Reflected light and shadow in the water's surface were used to track the seasons. In some cases, they even timed rituals around the way sunlight entered these natural wells. The priest offers you a sip of water from a gourd. It's sweet, cool, tinged with limestone. You drink slowly, reverently, as if it might carry the memory of the stars. Here's your obscure tidbit. In some communities, cenotes were believed to be the mouths of the gods' portals to the underworld, Shabalba, and if the shadows danced too fast on the surface, it meant the gods were awake. You and the priest sit together in silence as another drop echoes across the cavern. Plunk, plunk. Time, as always, is falling slowly. Eventually, you emerge back into the sunlight, blinking like a cat who's overslept. The plaza is busier now, with musicians warming up flutes, rattles, drums all tuned not to notes, but to rhythm. Rhythm of breath, of heartbeat, of footsteps across stone. You pass by a group of children tracing lines in the dust with sticks. They're copying the shapes of the building's teeny diagrams of the real thing. One girl carefully aligns her drawing with the length of her shadow. You ask why. She shrugs and says, "So it works." Of course it does. You've been invited to a feast tonight. Not a royal one, no gold, no jade, no roasted parrot. You're relieved. This one is for the artisans and the scribes, the ones who paint the calendars and chisel the star maps and string together meaning from shadows. As the sky darkens into velvet, small fires bloom across the plaza like orange flowers. You sit cross-legged among the weavers and stoneworkers and woodcarvers, and a bowl is handed to you. Inside, roasted squash, black beans, toasted maize, and something that might be iguana. You don't ask. A man across from you holds a slab of limestone in his lap. He's carving not a god, not a ruler, but a line, a simple angled groove. You ask him what it is. He replies, "Tomorrow's shadow." And then he adds, if the sun agrees, historical fact of the hour. Many Maya structures were adjusted slightly during construction, moved by just a few degrees, or shifted a few stones based on where the builders observed the shadows falling as they built. Blueprints were flexible. The sun had the final say. Nearby, a group of women are dyeing cotton using crushed plants and insects. One of them holds up a shimmering red cloth. Cochineal, she says, made from bugs, but pretty. Obscure tidbit. Cochineal dye, made from tiny insects living on cactus pads, produced a brilliant crimson. The Maya were using it centuries before Europe even figured out red socks. It was considered luxurious, sacred, and mildly alarming if you thought too hard about it. A storyteller stands now, silhouetted by firelight. He holds up a staff with 3 notches. He says each notch marks a turning of the moon. Every time I measure a story's shadow, he says, I know where I left off. His tale is slow, poetic, looping through time like a serpent swallowing its own tail. You hear words like eclipse and stone dream and sun pulled through a rope. You're not entirely sure what it means, but your eyes feel heavy, your body feels warm. The stars overhead twinkle with mischief, and you lie back once again, your head on your arm, as the storyteller's voice drifts into a rhythm so steady, so slow, it might as well be the heartbeat of the earth. You hear one final line, even the stars follow shadows, and then the drums begin, softly, like footsteps from another world. The next morning arrives without fanfare, no trumpets, no gods descending. Just the gentle return of birdsong and a sky that goes from plum to peach without asking your permission. You wake under the soft shade of a thatched roof, your mat slightly askew, your dreams still tangled with serpents made of light. There's a faint hum in the air, like the city itself is stretching. Today, someone tells you, is account day. You nod solemnly, as if you know what that means. Turns out, it's when the city's timekeepers, Yesid's actual full-time shadow watchers, gather to reconcile the Tizocan calendar with the Hobbs solar cycle. The two systems run like trains on different tracks, and every so often, they meet in what is poetically called the calendar round, or as one scribe mutters over his morning cacao, the cosmic traffic jam. Historical fact: the Maya used to major Kalatozwan ritual 260 days, and one solar 365 days. These interlocked like gears, aligning every 52 solar years. That moment was considered deeply significant, a spiritual checkpoint, a celestial software update. You find yourself standing beneath a large stone wheel, carved with hundreds of glyphs. A priest in blue robes turns it slowly while chanting under his breath. Each glyph he passes gets a brief shadow cast from a central column. The entire thing is timed to sunlight, a mechanical clock powered by the sky. You are, frankly, impressed and mildly sleepy. You sit beneath the wheel's shadow, letting it slide across your lap. Every few minutes, someone brings a new offering. A bowl of fruit, a carved figurine, a woven bracelet. You contribute your own small item, the frog from earlier. The priest raises an eyebrow, but accepts it without question. Obscure tidbit: some Mayan timekeepers believed that every shadow had a tone, a subtle feeling or mood that accompanied its shape. Some were sharp and full of urgency, others soft and mellow, like dusk made of marshmallow. Today's, definitely the latter. As the shadow of the wheel reaches its peak alignment, the priest nods once and declares, the new round begins. No one cheers. Instead, they breathe deeply, in, out, like the whole city just blinked in sync. You lean back, staring up at the clouds. They don't seem to be going anywhere, just like you. Later that day, you're invited to visit a workshop, one tucked beneath a low roof behind the scribe quarters. It smells like wet chalk and burned sap. The light here is diffused through slatted beams, casting bars across the floor like sleepy sun-prisoned stripes. Inside, artisans are carefully carving shadow glyphs. You watch a young man etch a narrow V-shape into a block of polished stone. This one, he says, is for the equinox. He then turns the stone slightly and draws a second line crossing the first. And this, he adds, is for the zenith. You ask how they know the angles are correct. He grins. We wait. The shadows tell us. Historical fact: Mayan builders often created calendrical sculptures, where specific parts of a carving would be illuminated or shadowed only on exact days of the year. They used obsidian plumb bobs, marked sticks, and careful repetition, not magic, just math. Well, and a lot of standing around watching light move very slowly. In the back corner of the room, a girl is grinding pigment using a stone and a slice of quartz. Her hands move in tight circles, round and round. She's making a color called Maya blue, a turquoise blend that somehow resists fading, even after centuries buried in damp tombs. No one quite knows how it holds up so well. That's your obscure fact of the day. Maya blue was a mysterious chemical mixture made from indigo and clay. Despite many attempts, modern scientists struggled for decades to replicate it exactly. Some still say we don't quite understand it. Just another secret the shadows haven't given up. You exit the workshop and blink into the light. The sun is beginning to lean westward again, casting long, lazy streaks across the ground. You pass a boy lying on his back with his eyes closed, whispering something to the sky. What are you doing, you ask. Measuring silence, he says, and somehow it makes perfect sense. You sit beside him for a while, both of you watching the shadows grow longer, softer, dreamier. They stretch like cats preparing for a nap, until eventually the ground becomes a quilt of half-light and hush. A bell chimes once from the far temple. The final shadow of the day has touched its mark. Another measurement made, another day folded gently into the books. Evening begins like melted obsidian, low, glossy, and swallowing the edges of things. You walk along a raised causeway lit by tiny clay lamps, each one flickering like a nervous idea. The lamps cast narrow shadows across your path, and you realize the entire walkway is designed to glow this way. Not just for visibility but for effect. Each flicker, each elongated shape on the limestone seems purposeful. You glance at your own shadow. It walks slightly ahead of you now, bolder than you, somehow. At the end of the path is a small circular platform, a kind of shadow theater. 5 upright columns stand in a ring, each with grooves carved into its face. You sit in the center, where a flat stone has been polished to mirror. Not for vanity, there are no mirrors in this world, only reflections that serve the sun. Soon, the moon rises. Its light cuts across the columns, sliding into the grooves one by one. As it hits each, it casts a bent sliver of light across the platform floor. Slowly, the floor becomes a glyph in motion. You're inside a calendar you can't read but deeply feel. Historical fact: some Mayan ceremonial platforms were aligned with the lunar cycle, especially to track the Metonic cycle, a nearly 19-year rhythm where the moon's phases repeat on the same days. This information was built into architecture, not scrolls. The buildings remembered when people forgot. Obscure cultural gem. There were Mayan rituals only performed under a shadowed moon when lunar eclipses painted the sky with red and made animals behave strangely. They called this the night of the bleeding eye. And yes, it's as poetic as it is unsettling. Tonight though, the moon is calm, milk-colored, steady. You lie flat again, staring upward. Above the columns, the stars begin to peek through the tree canopies. 1, then 3, then 20, and then a surprise. A firefly lands directly on your nose. You blink. It doesn't. Eventually, it flies off, leaving behind nothing but a flicker. You could swear the stars twinkle back in approval. By morning, the rain has come. Not a storm, not a downpour. Just a soft, brushing mist that turns stone steps into damp pages. You step carefully, feeling the water gather along the edges of the plazas in tiny, glinting pools. You make your way toward a structure everyone calls the watching house. It's unremarkable at first, glance short, square, shaded, but as you enter, something becomes clear. This place is built to observe. There are 4 tiny slits in the walls, each facing a cardinal direction. The floor slopes ever so slightly inward, like the entire room is bowing. You sit at the center and wait. The rain slows. A breeze clears the mist, and through the eastward slit, a beam of light appears narrow, focused, straight across your lap. Another one joins it from the south, then the west, then finally, from the north. All 4 rays connect around you, outlining your body in a soft box of morning light. You've become a sundial. You blink slowly. It's a beautiful trap. Historical fact: certain Mayan observation rooms were used not for ceremonial spectacle, but for studying the behavior of shadows during weather. Builders watched how rain changed light's angle, how clouds refracted beams, how humidity affected line clarity. It was science, but also art, obscure detail. In some records, these watching houses were also used to track the moods of gods. If the light came late, it was seen as divine distraction. If it split in two, it meant disagreement among the sky beings. And if it never came at all, well, that was a day to stay in bed. You stay in the watching house long after the rays fade. The rain returns, light but steady, a rhythm you begin to recognize. Each drop forms a small shadow of its own before it lands. A tiny disappearing ghost. You place your palm flat on the floor and wait until a single beam returns. It lands right at the center of your hand. And you think, not for the first time, that this city doesn't count time like we do. It listens to it. The city feels quieter today. Not empty, ever empty, but more contemplative, like a cat curled on a windowsill. You walk slower now, not from fatigue, but because the world around you seems to have slowed first. Even the birds are chirping in half speed. You find yourself back in the central plaza, only now it looks ... different. Not physically, just softer, more golden, like memory has dusted it with a warm blur filter. In the middle of the space is a new addition, a large wooden frame set up on 4 legs, with ropes, stones, and sticks dangling at precise intervals. A young astronomer is carefully adjusting each hanging object. You ask what it is. A shadow harp, he says. Of course it is. He explains that, as the sun passes, each stone will cast a shadow that touches the hanging stick beside it, causing it to chime gently. Not music exactly, just rhythm, like a sundial with a soundtrack. Historical fact. Some Mayan astronomers and engineers designed sound-based solar tools devices that would react to light and wind simultaneously, creating harmony between elements. Stone staircases that chirped when climbed, wind corridors that mimicked jaguar growls, shadow and sound as siblings. Obscure tidbit, in certain ceremonies, children were blindfolded and asked to feel the hour by sitting among moving shadows. Some reported warmth, others claimed they heard whispers. One said it smelled like roasted corn and memory. You linger by the shadow harp as the first note strikes tick, a soft clink, then another tick. You hear the time pass not in minutes, but in patient, floating tones. You sit, you breathe, and slowly, the light crawls across the plaza. People walk without urgency. A woman adjusts her shawl so the fabric matches the angle of her shadow. A man holds a bowl of water up to the sun to watch the reflection drift toward a carved mark on the rim. You don't know the hour, but somehow, you know exactly when it is. You lie back on the warm plaza floor, arms relaxed, eyes closing. And the final sound you hear is the harp's last tick, echoing like a sigh through stone and sky. Wind down. Let yourself settle now. There's no rush. The air is still warm, but the breeze has grown gentler, like someone slowly drawing a curtain across the day. The plaza, once filled with footsteps and whispering shadows, is now a quiet painting, stretched amber across ancient stone. You lie flat, listening, not for anything in particular, just to be part of the hush. A bird calls once, then forgets why. A frog chirps like a faraway drum. The shadows have all gone to sleep, lengthened so far they've slipped off the edge of the world. Even your breath feels slower, deeper, like it's sensing with something older than you. The stone beneath your spine holds the warmth of 100 sunsets. The sky above you holds the memory of stars. The buildings you once passed are now silhouettes, folded gently into the arms of twilight. And you are nothing more than another moment, drifting. Let your fingers rest against the cool of the earth. Let your thoughts dissolve like smoke from the last ceremonial fire. No more steps, no more questions. Just the quiet, steady truth that somewhere, even now, a shadow is moving, waiting, measuring. You are still, you are seen, you are part of the time itself, and now, You can sleep. Morning arrives like a whispered apology, soft, a little damp, and barely awake itself. You rise slowly, cocooned in the warmth of your blanket, the scent of dew and damp stone lingering nearby like a ghost with excellent manners. You stretch and look toward the eastern temple. A thin finger of light is reaching between the columns. You follow it barefoot. When you arrive, you notice something new. A stone basin, freshly polished, filled with water so still it seems solid. Floating in the middle is a single red flower. You lean over it. Your reflection looks back. But what catches your eye is not your face, it's the shadow behind it. Not yours. Not the flowers. Something else. The silhouette of a carving on the wall, positioned so precisely that only at this moment, this sliver of sunrise, does it appear in the water. It's a serpent, or maybe a river, or both. You blink, the shadow dissolves, the flower floats on. Historical fact: Mayan architects sometimes designed reflective basins to capture momentary shadow alignments. They used still water as a lens for studying eclipse behavior, planetary movement, or ceremonial timing. It was, essentially, a mirror telescope. Quiet, temporary, genius. Your obscure tidbit. One 9th century Mayan city reportedly banned mirrors for everyday use, believing too many reflections confused the gods. Instead, mirrors were reserved for sacred events or very specific people, usually shamans and very well-groomed kings. You sit beside the basin for a long time. Eventually, another visitor arrives, a small brown bird, hopping along the edge. It pecks once at the flower stem, then vanishes. Just as the light shifts again, everything is always just on the edge of vanishing here. Later, you wander past the steely garden. Remember those towering stone slabs from before. You pass one you're sure you've never seen. On it, a man is crouched beside a pool of water, just like you were, but in his hands, a frog, a perfect carving of the one you offered days ago. You laugh once, soft and sleepy. Somehow, you've become a glyph. The sun climbs higher. You find yourself walking a narrow path lined with low, rectangular stones like a calendar laid flat on the ground. Each stone is carved with a symbol, a face, a tooth, a flame, a hand, a fish. You step carefully between them, though no one tells you not to. It just feels like the right thing. At the far end of the path is a stone seat, just one. It faces west. You sit. A soft breeze lifts your hair, and then, slowly, a single beam of light stretches from the temple behind you, threading its way across the stones until it lands directly on your lap. You look down. The light is shaped triangular, sharp, like the tip of a spear or the peak of a pyramid. It points directly at your chest. Then it fades. That was the measurement. Just that. No ceremony. No applause. You stand and walk back, looking over your shoulder as if the light might return. It doesn't. Historical fact: some Mayan city paths were designed as shadow corridors. When walked at certain times of year, the structures would cast symbolic shapes on the traveler's body: arrows, wings, serpents. These were not random. They were signs, blessings, reminders that the world was watching. Obscure detail. There is a surviving glyph that loosely translates to, "He who walks the shadow path must not yawn." Scholars debate whether this was a spiritual warning or just advice for maintaining posture during holy ceremonies. You find a shaded corner beneath a tree and sit once more, eyes closing briefly. You imagine the shadow path still exists beneath your skin, like a mark only the sun can read. And just before you drift off again, a lizard scampers across your toes, pauses, then curls up in the crook of your ankle. Even shadows need resting places. The air smells different today, less like stone and smoke, more like green things waking up. Somewhere nearby, rain has recently visited. The leaves glisten with it, the steps shine. Your sandals slip a little as you walk. You make your way to the outer edge of the city, where the buildings give way to the jungle. Not a wall exactly, more like a slow unraveling. Stone becomes root, brick becomes vine, light becomes shadow again, but now it's dappled, dancing. You're here to visit what they call the Edge Temple. It's barely still standing, half swallowed by a ceiba tree that seems determined to turn sacred architecture into mulch. Inside, it's quiet. The walls lean, the roof is gone, and the vines trail across the stone floor like veins. But in the center of the ruin, still intact, is a single round platform. No carvings, no glyphs. Just a circle that glows faintly in the filtered light. You sit, you wait. A priest arrives, young, barefoot, quiet. He doesn't speak. He simply places a small obsidian shard beside you and points upward. You look. A narrow slit in the ceiling, if it can still be called that, frames a patch of sky. A cloud drifts across it, and then the light enters. A shaft of white hits the obsidian, which reflects it tonally barely onto the circular floor. A blur of light, shaped like a snake. Historical fact: many Mayan temples were designed to allow one perfect alignment per year, often tied to equinox or solstice events. Some of these alignments weren't about the sun itself, but about shadows the sun helped cast through reflective surfaces, sharpened rock slits, or even pools of water. Today's obscure tidbit: in some regions, it was believed that shadows cast through clouds carried divine messages. Priests would sit for hours watching diffused light patterns, interpreting them like scrolls of wind-written prophecy. You sit for a long time after the light fades. The young priest is gone. The jungle rustles nearby, alive, indifferent, watching. You run your hand across the platform and feel that it's still warm. Light has a memory, too. You're dreaming again, or maybe remembering. You see the corridor, the same one you've passed so many times. But now it's dark. Not night dark, cloud dark. A heavy ceiling of gray blocks the sun. You walk the path anyway, slowly, carefully. The carved lines in the walls are barely visible now, their meaning washed in shadowless fog. And then something changes. A break in the clouds, a single beam. It lands on a pillar, ahead just briefly, and, for that moment, every groove, every symbol, every story flares into view. It's like the entire city inhales together. You feel something familiar. You're awake, and it's raining. A soft curtain-like drizzle. It beads on your arms. It darkens the stone steps. It dapples the plaza like the skin of a jaguar. You walk to the observatory. It's quiet. The main chamber is open, the roof lined with slits and notches that once blazed with sunlight, but today it collects rain. You find a dry spot on the edge of the inner circle and sit. Water drips through one of the slits and lands in a small depression on the floor. Plink, plink, plink. Every drop lands at the same angle. You realize the slit wasn't only made for light, it was also built for rain. Historical fact: some Mayan observatories had dual-purpose openings designed to study both sun and storm. They believed water carried messages, just as shadows did. Patterns in rainfall were read, recorded, and folded into their calendars. Obscure gem: certain temple priests were trained as sky readers and water listeners. They listened to the cadence of rainfall, noting changes in tempo and pitch. According to one inscription, the sky speaks twice, once in fire, once in water. You stay there, watching the drops trace the same line across the stone. A shadow appears, faint, rippled by the rain. Your own, sitting still, listening, waiting for the next drop. The rain has stopped, but the city glistens like it's wearing a new skin. You walk carefully along the slick steps, each footfall soft, deliberate, quiet. The sky is pale now, washed and wide, and for the first time, you feel the presence of time, not as something that passes, but something that pools. You make your way to the Temple of the Folds. No one calls it that officially, but the name has floated to you through whispers like a rumor or a lullaby. It's not the largest temple, nor the oldest, but it is, perhaps, the most contemplative. The outer facade is covered in overlapping triangular ledges. As the sun returns, its light begins to climb the building like an insect on paper, one edge at a time. With each ledge, a new line is born. Shadow, shadow, light, shadow. A pattern forms, a rhythm of rest. You sit at the base and lean against the lowest stone. The warmth has returned, gently, and so has your silence. Historical fact. The Temple of the Folds' real name, long lost, was likely built to reflect the Catan cycle, a 20-year unit in the Maya long count calendar. Each step or ledge represented a segment of time, and during key festivals, sunlight was watched as it moved from fold to fold, like a cosmic bookmark. Obscure detail. The Maya sometimes folded paper not to write on it, but to measure time. Bark paper codices were creased in equal segments and exposed to light through narrow windows, with each segment catching the sun in order, a kind of origami sundial, as it were. You watch the light climb the folds, your breath sinking with each new reveal. One shadow touches your foot, the next lands across your knee. You close your eyes and feel the warmth stretch across your lap like a sleeping cat. Nothing is moving quickly. Nothing is trying to impress you. Time, here, is an elder patient, quiet, and wise enough to wait for your attention. You offer it fully. The plaza smells like ash and blossoms tonight. You follow the scent to a low altar near the center, where petals have been arranged into concentric circles, yellow, red, and deep indigo. A few people are gathered, kneeling in silence, placing offerings made of woven grass and polished shells. A boy, no older than 10, lights a small ceramic lantern. The flame flickers inside a chamber filled with perforations, tiny holes that cast patterns on the stone. As he turns the lantern slowly, the dots of light begin to dance across the walls and nearby columns, forming shifting glyphs and curling snakes. It takes you a moment to understand. This is a shadow projector. Historical fact. The Maya used pierced lanterns and slotted braziers in ceremonial spaces to create moving light patterns during rituals. Some researchers believe these devices were designed to simulate the motion of stars or celestial serpents in early planetarium, projected in real time, using nothing but fire and carved clay. Obscure tidbit. In a few rare finds, archaeologists uncovered lanterns carved to project specific glyphs only during eclipses, lining shape, time, and darkness into one visual poem. The boy hands the lantern to an elder, who tilts it just so. The shadow of a jaguar ripples across the plaza floor. Someone whispers, "He walks tonight." You sit back, arms around your knees, watching the shadows move like silent dancers. There's no narration, no explanation, only the flicker, the warmth of nearby people, the scent of marigold and charcoal. You close your eyes for a moment, and you see the same patterns behind your eyelids, dots of light, stripes of meaning. Somewhere nearby, a flute begins to play the softest possible tunes, just 5 notes, repeated like breath. You feel the earth beneath you hum, And again you sense it, not time passing, but time arriving, as soft as a shadow, as slow as a story. The final morning has arrived. You can feel it not in a dramatic, trumpeting way, but in the hush that lingers longer between bird calls, in the warmth of the ground, already awake before the sun has fully stretched, in the air, which carries a weight not of sadness, but of conclusion. You walk toward a small mound you've passed every day without noticing. It's modest, overgrown, no dramatic carvings or commemorative stele, just a lump of stone in the grass, partially buried beneath vines and silence. But today, someone waits for you there. An old man sits cross-legged on the stones, running his fingers across a flat slab. He beckons you without speaking. You sit beside him. He points at this slab. Etched into it, barely visible now, is a set of tiny concentric circles. At the center, a dot, a shadow calendar. He says, but not for days. You tilt your head. This one's for moments. He places a smooth obsidian disc on the center. As the light passes through a notch in the trees, it hits the disc, and a shadow forms along the inner ring. Just for a second, maybe less. That was one, he says. Historical fact. Some Mayan tools were built not to mark grand alignments or equinoxes, but the smallest measurable shift tracking, not days or years, but transitions between one ritual phase and the next, between prayer and silence, between step and breath, a sacred pause turned visible. Obscure gem. One codex fragment references the hour of the unseen sun, a moment believed to exist between two shadows, when the gods listen most closely, a pause so brief, most miss it. But the Maya built entire platforms to hold it. You sit in silence. You wait. Another shadow slides across the slab. The man nods. That was another. And suddenly, you feel it, not time, but attention, like the world has noticed you noticing it. He gently presses your hand to the slab, and you feel its warmth. A third shadow comes, and then he stands, bows slightly, and walks away, leaving you alone, at the center, with the moment. You wander one final time through the city, but now, it doesn't feel like walking forward. It feels like turning back through a dream you once had, made of stone and birdsong, of flickering shadows and sun-shaped silences. You pass the temple corridor, the calendar plaza, the frog carving, still smirking. The shadow harps silent now, but you can still hear its memory. The pathways feel smaller, or maybe you've grown, or maybe you've just learned to step softly enough that time doesn't flinch. The buildings are no longer ancient, they're familiar. Not ruins, not monuments, just neighbors. The light doesn't impress you anymore, it comforts you. You reach the outer causeway. Beyond it, the trees lean close again, ready to swallow the path in soft leaves and vine. You pause. The city behind you is beginning to gloth, morning sun striking the eastern walls, painting them gold. Shadows stretch once more, measuring, reaching, not grasping but welcoming. You take one step into the jungle. The shadows follow, not to hold you back, not to chase, just to accompany you. Because the Maya didn't build to last forever. They built so that even when forgotten, even when buried, even when turned into bedtime stories told to strangers through a screen, the shadows would still know how to find you. And now finally, softly you exhale. Let your eyes close. Let the last rays fall, and sleep, in the long, slow company of time. End card. And so, the journey ends. You've walked through stone corridors and corridors of light. You've followed shadows across temples, and time across your own heartbeat. The city has quieted. The light has gone home, and you've become part of the rhythm. If you're still awake, thank you for staying with us. Gently leave a comment if you'd like. Tell us where you joined from, or what you saw in your dreams, and if you're not awake anymore, or the shadows will wait until you are.